Please be seated. The court is now back in session and the floor is given to Nguyen Chi's defense to put questions to this civil party. You may take the floor. Good morning, Your Honors, Mr. President, and good morning once again, by Supani. My name is Sonarun, Defense Counsel for Nguyen Chi. I have some questions for you this morning. Due to the limited time that I have, I shall be brief. On the 17th April 1975, where were you? Answer. On the 17th April 1975, I was in Phnom Penh near the area of Cambodia. Thank you. Question. On that day, that is the 17th April 1975, the Khmer soldiers came to your house. What time was it? Answer. On the 17th April 1975, the Khmer soldiers did not enter my house, but they were shooting into the air and chasing the people, that is my neighbors, to immediately leave their houses. They fired shots into the air and chased us to go away in 3 days because the Americans would drop bombs. I was shocked upon hearing that, so I could no longer stay in my house. In addition, I could not stay long and waiting for the Khmer to enter my house and saw the photos of my husband, who was the senior military officer in military uniform, as well as the photos of my extended families of Marshal Lunol. Thank you. Question. The Khmerus did not directly chase you to go away from your house, but it did so to your neighbors. Is that correct? Answer. They were about to come to my house because they were approaching from my neighboring houses, and it would come to my house soon. For that reason, I decided to leave my house immediately. That was the case that they chased everybody to leave the house. Questioned. As you said, they did not chase you and your family, but they did so to your neighbors. But it was your understanding that it was unavoidable that they would chase you from your house. Is this correct? Answer. The Khmerus chased people from every house, and they were about to come to my house. For that reason, I had to leave my house because I was very sure that they would come to my house soon. Question. Allow me to clarify this point. When they were about to approach you and your house, how far were they and how many houses were in between? President. Madam Civil Party, please pause a bit until you see the red light on the microphone. Answer. It was just one house down, then it would be my house. For that reason, I was very shocked. I did not gather much belonging, and I had to live with my children. Thank you. Question. Does this mean you left Phnom Penh on your own free will and not by the Khmer rules? Is this correct? Answer. I did not leave my house on my own free will. Who would do that? It's because of the act by the Khmer Rouge soldiers. They fire shots into the air and they chase people to go away from their house. As instead, the Americans would drop bomb. And that was the statement that scared everyone. So although they did not come to my house yet, and of course I would be afraid for them to come to my house and see the photos of my husband and families, I hate to leave. If they were to enter my house and saw the photos and while I was there, then there would be big trouble for me. Question. Yes, I understand your point. Allow me to move forward. When the Khmer Rouge were one house down from your house, did you observe that they were threatening your neighbors, or they were in an ordinary, normal character or behavior? President, Civil Party, please wait. The assigned counsel for Civil Party, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. This line of questioning is repetitive, and at this point, I believe the defense counsel is badgering our witness.
Sonarun, allow me to respond. I am a defense counsel, and we haven't yet questioned or completed the questions of this civil party, and that is the right of the defense counsel to only focus on one particular matter or to put it in a segmented based on our approach. And if, of course, the civil party cannot respond, that would be at the discretion of the bench. President, the objection raised by the assigned counsel for civil party is not sustained. The civil party, you are instructed to respond to the question put to you by the defense counsel. President, it seems that the civil party cannot recall the last question put to her. Defense counsel, please repeat your last question. Counsel, in order to save time, as we only have 10 minutes, I move on. When you saw the Khmer Rouge approaching your house, what did you observe? Were they behaving in a cruel manner, or was their behavior normal? And what were they wearing at that time? What was the environment like? Answer. They were of stern facial expressions. They stared at us. They threatened everyone to leave the house. They fired shots into the air and they shouted for everyone to leave the house, otherwise the Americans would drop the bombs. And that we had to leave the house within for 3 days. So they were not in a humble manner. They were of a cruel nature. and they wore black uniform. Counsel, thank you. You were not chased from your house, but from your response, it looks very clear that they did so to you, and that you saw them threatening and they firing shot into the air. When they were near your house, did you hear them shouting directly, and how come you seem to be very sure on your response? Answer. I was very sure because the house was not far from my house. I heard everything. I heard the loud shouting by the Khmerus chasing people to go away from their house. It was not the gentle voice. And of course, this is compounded by the fact that they fire shots into the air. And that is the fact. Counsel, thank you. When you evacuated yourself from Phnom Penh, you reached a certain location and you ran out of rice and food and everything else, and you only had a ring which was a gift from your in-law, so you changed it for rice and later on you changed it for medicine, if I am not mistaken. My question is, when you did the bartering, that is from rice to medicine, whom did you exchange it with and where? President, Civil Party, please pause. The assigned counsel for Civil Party, you may proceed.
Your Honor, the defense counsel just assumed a fact that was not given in her testimony. He just claimed that Mrs. Bay evacuated herself when she has clearly repeated over and over again that she heard orders telling people to leave the city and there were gunshots. She did not evacuate herself, nor has she ever made this statement. So we would appreciate it if you didn't pose this in a question to her when she has not made that testimony.
Son Aaron, the objection raised by the assigned counsel is not to the point that I said. This is a new fact. She said she had a diamond earring which was a gift from her in-law, and in a row of exchanges she got the medicine. And my question is, whom did she exchange it with and where? That is my main point of the question. President, assigned counsel for Civil Parties, you may proceed. And Madam Civil Party, please wait.
Your Honor, I'm objecting to the form of the question. He began the question by assuming a fact that wasn't in Mrs. Bay's testimony. He said, when you evacuated yourself, and then he proceeded with the remainder of his question. We're objecting to that form of question that he posed to her.
President, the objection is not sustained. Civil Party, you are instructed to respond to the last question put to you by the defense counsel. Civil Party, I exchanged my ring, and it was done secretly with the villagers in that village. That was the Trawisla village. Questioned, were those villagers the new 17 April people, or were they the best people in the village? President, Madam Civil Party, please observe a slight pause before you respond. civil party. Those were the villagers who had been living in that Trausla village. They had pity on me and they gave us food. And I exchanged the ring with them secretly without the knowledge of the Khmer Rouge Council. My point is, what kind of people did you exchange the ring with? Were they the best people or were they the new people like yourself? Answer: they were not the new people, they were the old people or the best people as they were called at the time. Question: if they were the best people, how did they know that your ring was of a great value and agreed to exchange it for rice? Answer: they knew it very well because they were not the people who never knew the city. They were of a kind of a wealthy status who lived in the village. They knew the gold and the diamond very well. Question:
នៅពេលដែលវៀតណាមអ្នកស្រីបានជម្រាបតុលាការពីព្រឹកមិញថា
This morning you stated before this court that before the arrival of the Vietnamese, you were asked to dig a pit which was 2 times 0.5 with a 1 meter depth. Why were you asked to dig the pit? Were you given any reasons for digging the pit? Answer: you were mistaken. It's not the Vietnamese who asked me to dig the pit, it was the Khmer Rouge. It was the chief and the deputy chief of the village who forced the people to dig pits for each family. Counsel, I apologize if I made a mistake in my question, but in fact my question was prior to the arrival of the Vietnamese, the Khmer Rouge at the time asked you and the family to dig the pit. Were you given reasons for digging the pit? Answer: I did not have any family members remain with me. I was by myself as my children all died. I was living in the 17th April village at the time, and the persons who asked me to dig the pit were the chief and the deputy chief of the village, and each family was asked to dig a pit. And as I was by myself, I was also asked to dig a pit, and I asked why, and the Khmer Rouge soldiers told me that although I was by myself, I was considered a family on my own, and was asked to dig the pit, which was 2 meters long, half a meter wide, and 1 meter deep. But I did not complete the digging because the Vietnamese arrived. Counsel, this is my last question. You told the court this morning that your health is not that great, and your memory doesn't serve you well, and you have a chronic mental trauma. If you have all these symptoms and conditions, how could you work in an organization to assist other women in mental health? President, the assigned counsel for civil parties, you may proceed.
Your Honor, Mrs. Bay never said in her testimony that her memory was not good. We would really ask that the defense counsel stop assuming facts that aren't in the evidence when he's posing his questions to Mrs. Bay.
Defense counsel. As a defense counsel, I am entitled to ask even a smaller detail from the civil party to make sure the statement she makes is truthful or not. That is my point. President. Counsel, it seems that you don't really follow the proceedings and the procedures practiced in this court. You can only object once to the same point, not twice. And your objection is sustained. The question put by the defense counsel is not related to the facts being processed before this court. For that reason, civil party, you are instructed not to respond to the last question, and the time is now up for the Nunchi's defense, and the floor is therefore given to Kilsimpon's defense. Defense counsel. Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors, and good morning, Madam Civil Party. On behalf of my client, Kilsimpon, I do not have any questions for this civil party. President, thank you. And thank you, Madam Bay Supani. The hearing of your statement of sufferings and harm and testimony has now concluded. You may be excused from this court, and your statement of suffering and harm and testimony may contribute to ascertaining the truth in this case, and we wish you good health and good luck, and you may return to your residence. Court officer, in collaboration with the VISU, please assist Madame Bay Supani for her return to her residence or wherever she wishes to go to. You may now leave the courtroom, Madame Bay Supani. President, court officer, could you invite the civil party TCCP 145 into the courtroom? President, good morning, Mr. Civil Party. What is your name? Civil Party. My name is Soon Suwandi. Thank you. Is it Suwandi or Suwani? Mr. Suwandi, please observe a slight pause between the question and answer session so that your response can be interpreted. And please observe the red light on the tip of the microphone, which indicates that it is activated, and your voice will therefore go through the voice distribution system for the party and for the public, as well as for the interpreters, as your voice will be interpreted into other languages. How old are you? Answer: I am 57 years old. Question: Where were you born? Answer: I was born at Dam Ko Market, at Kabal Mon Chai, Sadam Ko Market, that is in Phnom Penh. Question: Where is your current address? Answer: I lived in Bang Veng village, Riang Kasai sub-district, Songkla district, Bat Dambong province. Question: What is your occupation? Answer: I am a rice farmer. I work in a rice fields. Question: What are the names of your parents? Answer: My father is Mok Chen and my mother is Kam Lieng. Question: What is your wife's name and how many children do you have? Answer: My wife is Song Supai. We only have one child. Thank you, Mr. Sun Sawandi. As a civil party before this court, you are given an opportunity to make your statement of suffering and harm and any impact inflicted upon you materially, physically, and psychologically, which are the direct results of the crimes that occurred and which led you to become a civil party in this case. The crimes which have been charged against the two accused, that is Nuon Chi and Khieu Sampon, and which occurred during the Democratic Cambodia regime from the 17th April 1975 to the 6th January 1979. You may proceed.
In 1975, on the 17th of April, I was evacuated through Kabal Tunnel all the way to Chpam Pau, and then finally I reached Sang Koh Toi. When I was being evacuated, my parents and my older siblings had left earlier, and I had to stay behind at home with my older sister. And then a week later, I was evacuated. When they were evacuating us, they used force to move us out of our house on the pretext that we would leave for a few days in order to reorganize Phnom Penh, and then we would be returning to our home. So we left our house. We were looking for my parents, because before they left, they told me that if I looked for them along the river bank, I would find them. But then I tried to look for them anywhere, but I could not find them. I only saw dead bodies along the street. I just went on and on aimlessly. They told us that we would go to a place where Angkar designated for us, and they told us that Angkar had plentiful food for us to eat. We would have sufficient things to eat. Unlike Lon Nol regimes, we had to pay for everything. Over there, we did not have to pay anything, but we had a lot of things to eat. Then I was looking for my parents. I told people along the ways, and then they told me that my parents were sent back to welcome Samdech Sihanouk. I wanted to return back home, but I was not allowed to do so. They told me that I must not return home or I would be killed. So they told me that those who were supposedly sent to welcome Samdech Sihanouk was meant to die. So eventually they put me in the work site. On the early days, they distributed some food for us, rice, 2 cans of rice for us. But once we got fully into the work site, they no longer gave us rice. Instead, we had to eat communally. We were given only a few ladles of watery gruel for us to eat. At that time, it was a prison without wall. We had to work very hard. They forced us to work extremely hard. And as for our food ration, the watery gruel was purely water, and if they saw us some vegetable inside our gruel, then they would beat us. If we only got 1 mango, they would beat us with the whip of the weapon. They discriminated against us, saying that we were from the feudalist family, we were from the city, we were the city people, we were capitalists. So they discriminated against us. They said that it served us well when we came to the countryside enduring starvation. That's what they mocked at us. And in addition, I was from Cambodia Crown, but I had resided in Cambodia for a long time, so I did not carry the action of Cambodia Crown people. And my parents were, of course, from Cambodia Crown. They still had a strong action of Cambodia Crown, so they always accused me of being Cambodia Crown. At that time, they rounded up people from Cambodia Crown, and then they were all executed. They rounded them up in different locations, and then they told me that those people who had been rounded up were taken to do the plantation or farming somewhere else, but in reality, those people were all killed. They accused them of being Vietnamese. But in reality, they were not, because they had resided in Cambodia for a long time during the Sangkum Rias Niyom time. but they carry certain surnames which follow the Vietnamese tradition, and then they accused them of being Vietnamese. And when they were talking and chatting with each other, sometimes they express themselves in Vietnamese, then they were accused of being Vietnamese. For example, if they had some action which was the tradition of Vietnamese, then they would be accused of being Vietnamese. Upon hearing any Vietnamese sound accent, those people would be considered Vietnamese, and they would be destined for smashing. They said that the Cambodia Crown people were the agent of the Vietnamese. They were the agent of the CIA. During the Khmer Republic, there were soldiers supported by the Cambodia Crown people, and my uncles were from Cambodia Crown. They were soldiers of the Khmer Republic, and some of other uncles worked for the late Son San rather. And other relatives of mine from Rumlik, Bangkana, and other places also worked for the Republic Khmer. And I actually tried to look for my relatives in Rang Say commune, and I actually continue to look for my parents everywhere, including the various refugee sites along the border too, but I was despaired. I could not find them. I actually worked as a soldier myself, but my intention was to look for my relatives and my parents, but it was very hopeless. I decided to return to Cambodia Crown. I looked for the relatives of my fathers, but I could not find anyone. They were all killed. I witnessed it by my own eyes that the Khmer Cambodia Crown were indiscriminately killed during that time. So this is my statement of the event at that time. As for the suffering I endured, it was beyond words can describe, because it was like the suffering sustained by other victims. We ate virtually everything at that time, including insect, the president. In order to speed up the proceedings, I now hand over the floor to the lawyers to put the question to the civil party. Counsel Samsukung. Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, Mr. Sirin Sawandi. According to your statement earlier, you said that your family were forcibly evacuated from Phnom Penh around a week earlier before you left. Can you tell the court the reason why your family had to leave earlier, a week earlier, and then you stay behind in Phnom Penh a week later before you left? Response. My parents asked me to stay behind to look after the house with my elder sister, Mui Yi. So we had to look after the house at that time. We did not even expect that we would be evacuated or we would be required to leave our house. We did not imagine that the situation would happen. But at that time, the situation was completely different. They pointed gun at us, so we had no choice but to leave our house. Somehow was even attacked by rocket propellers, grenade. And I had to leave our house looking for my parents, but it was only hopeless along the way. I could not find anything. They only told me that my parents had already returned to Phnom Penh to welcome Samdech Council. You say that when the Khmer Rouge troop entered Phnom Penh, there were exchange of fires and gunfires. So when the Khmer Rouge entered your house, did they come as soldiers and did they force you to leave your house at gunpoint? Response: yes, of course, they forcibly evacuated out of our house. They forced us to leave our house by threat. So they actually threatened us with the bombardment by Americans on the city. They said that we had to leave our house, otherwise we would be killed by the bombardment. They said that if we did not believe them, we would look at the street, everyone were packing and leaving the cities. And then when we look outside, of course, we saw people marching along the street, carrying foodstuff and other things out of the city. So they were fearful of being bombarded by Americans. Question. In the course of evacuation, when you were being evacuated out of Phnom Penh, you left the city 1 week after your family. So when you were leaving the city, what was the situation like along the way? Response: along the way, I witnessed corpses scatter along the street, and they were killed during the exchange of fires. And just a few weeks before that, they were lured to return to Phnom Penh on the pretext that they would welcome the return of Prince Sihanouk. And then I also witnessed the bulldozer removing and burying the dead body. They just pushed the dead body into the pits. Particularly along the riverbank, you would see corpses over there. We did not even go to fetch the water to drink from the river because we saw dead bodies inside. We only got the water from the wells nearby. Question: concerning your evacuation, what suffering did you endure in the course of evacuation, and what was your feeling of being evacuated at that time? Response: at that time, I did not imagine that these things would happen, and I saw dead bodies along the street. I did not know who these people were, and they told us, actually they encouraged us to move forward, saying that we would reach a place where we had plenty of things to eat over there. Then I thought that probably I would reach that place. Before we left Phnom Penh, they also told us the same thing. They told us that unlike the Lon Nol regimes, we had to pay for food we ate. For example, 5 riel per bowl of noodle. Then over there, we would pay only 2 riel per bowl of noodle or so. We would have a lot of things to eat over there. Question: concerning your evacuation, you said you did not meet with your parents. What was your feeling like at that time when you did not meet your parents? You actually tried to meet with them. You did not know the fate of your parents at that time. What was your feeling like at that time? A response. I was completely despaired at that time. I was around 17 or 18 years old. I did not have that, I was actually terrified when I saw the dead bodies along the way. And when I got to the work site, I realized that the situation would be different. It was not as what they told me, because we had to work very hard. And there was a segregation among people in the work site too. Those who were considered the 17 April people had to work very hard and had nothing to eat. Question. When you were marching out of Phnom Penh along the way until you reached Sang Kathong, when you were on the move, were your biography taken by the Khmer Rouge? Response. Well, at that time, I had my biography written. There was a man from the former Ministry of Veteran Affairs. He saw me carrying water for him. He whispered to me that I must not reveal my true biography. For example, I must not tell them that my parents were the former official of the previous regimes. All my life would be in danger. I should only tell them that your parents were farmers. If you ever told them that your parents were officials, you would be killed. So that's what he whispered to me. So I told them that I was the son of farmers. I was minding cattle, and then B-52 drops and kill all the animals. So I had to come with them. So they asked me to stay in one side. Counsel, well, I would like to interrupt you. I need to move to a more specific point. You told the court earlier that at that time, in your village or in your cooperative, people were segregated. They were named 17 April people or New people or Khmer Krom people. So can you enlighten the court if when the Khmer Rouge learned that certain groups of people were Khmer Krom or the 17 April people, what was their living condition like, and what was the overall treatment of these people like? Response. When they took the biography of the people, they actually could recognize the actions of people from Cambodia Crown. So upon knowing that they were from Cambodia Crown, then they would classify them or group them in one particular group, and then they would assign them for a certain work. And we thought to ourselves that we would be in problems. We did not know our fate, actually. On that day, I wanted to join with that team as well, but some people told me that I must not join that group. And then the next day later, that group of people were evacuated, were executed rather. Question. You told the court that you lost your parents and relatives. Do you happen to know when they all disappeared and what actually happened to them? Do you know that? Response. At that time, I think that there was some sort of purges. They tried to segregate between the 17 April people, the 18 April people, and Cambodia Crown people. So there was a clear segregation. There was no mixed of Cambodian people. The 17 April people cannot stay with the 18 April people. So there was a clear segregation in the group of people. I think that was the approach that they mobilized in order to clearly divide the people. I was there. At that time, there was a sense of hatred against those with Vietnamese action. Question. You knew that your parents and relatives died. Do you know when they died and why they died? Response. When I was on the way actually to Sang Pretoj, I was told by people that my parents had already returned to Phnom Penh to welcome Samdech Sihanouk. Before I left the city, not only my parents left, but other families also left. So when we were there, people told me that my parents and relatives had already returned to Phnom Penh. Those people were considered educated people, so they had to return to Phnom Penh to welcome Samdech Sihanouk so that he would reorganize the structure in the government because he was the former officials. And then they disappeared. And they told us that they were all killed, but I did not know where they were executed. Counsel. I know that you are holding photos in your hand. What is your intention of bringing this photo to the court? This is a photo of my family. We took in Cambodia Crown. This was our family photo. This is my father. Next to my father is my mother, my aunt, and Seung Savanna, Seung Savani, Seung Savandi, that is me. And the little baby held by my mother is Seung Savandun. This is my uncle. He was a Lampata driver in Olympic, but they were all killed. My uncle Thach Long Eung Kech was sent a letter during the Lonol administration. The Lonol soldiers and American soldiers were sending them for fighting. They were there. Then when I came back to Cambodia, people told me that they were all killed instantly, but when they got on board a boat, they were told that they would be returned to Cambodia Crown, but their boat was shelled and eventually they were all killed in Tunlibat.
លោកអាចជំរាបប្រាប់
Question.
សាវនាការថាតើលោកមានការឈឺចាប់ពីការស្លាប់ក្រុមគ្រួសារ
Can you describe the suffering as a result of the loss of your family members?
ការឈឺចាប់បន្តដល់បច្ចុប្បន្ននេះដែរទេ
Does your suffering still sustain until today? Response. I would like to ask the chamber, and I would also like to ask Mr. Nuanjie and Mr. Kilsampon. Council interrupts. Question. Of course, you will be given the opportunity to put the question, but I would like to know the state of suffering you have sustained as a result of the loss of your beloved family, your relatives, and your parents. I know that, of course, you had a great pain after losing them, but does this pain continue until today for you? Response. Concerning the suffering, in the past I had great suffering, but until today it subsides gradually because the time has lapsed. But when looking back to the past, of course, I had great suffering and I wanted justice immediately at the times, and now it has been many years. But whatever it is, I am happy with what we are doing now. We are trying to find justice, and I hope that if the justice is done, then my suffering will subside. I believe that if we really want to dwell on this, then Cambodia would not be at peace. We will continue to face unrest. You know, in Cambodian history, at that time people talk about Viet Cong. Viet Cong was fighting, but actually when we went into the forest fighting, it was not between us and Viet Cong, but it was between Khmer and Khmer. Question. When you filed your application to join as a civil party, what was your intention of your application to join as a civil party? And as far as the reparation is concerned, what claims are you trying to request to the court to be awarded as a reparation for you? Response. As for reparation, first and foremost, in order to reduce the level of suffering I have, I would like the court to order the constructions of school, of road, as well as stupa in the pagodas, so that people can pay tribute to the Khmer Kampuchea crowns who were killed at that time. Because at that time the levels of crimes they committed were so barbaric. Even a small baby were also killed. They were crushed into a tree trunk at that time. So this was a barbaric act, and those people should be punished. Questions. Now this is the opportunity for you to put the question to the co-accused or any particular accused. And with that, I thank you very much for coming to testify in court today. The President, Mr. Savandi, thank you. If you have questions for the co-accused, you may put the questions. However, you have to put the questions through us, the chamber. Then we will refer the question to the accused. That is the procedures that is provided for in the Cambodian law, as well as the internal rules applicable before this chamber. You may proceed. The civil party. I would like to ask some questions to Mr. Nguyen Chie and Mr. Khieu Sampon. My first question is, why were the Khmer Krom people rounded up, purged, and then smashed? And why were they accused of Cambodian-dom of being Cambodian with Vietnamese head? My second question. Were you involved in the policy making that led to the killing and suffering of Cambodian people during that regime? The third question. If you happen to return to lead this regime again, would you do it differently? The President. Thank you, Mr. Sawandi. Now I refer your three questions to the co-accused, and I have to refer your question to Mr. Khieu Sampon first to respond to your questions and followed by Mr. Nguyen Chie. Counsel, International Counsel for Mr. Nguyen Chie, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honours. Although I don't object to questions raised by the civil parties, I do note, and I would like to observe, that the first question is far outside of the scope of the present trial. I'm not sure if questions of scope of the trial are questions which the defense can raise, but I do note that the prosecution of the Kampuchea Krom is not part of this trial.
The President, National Counsel for Mr. Khieu Sampon, you may proceed. Counsel Kung Samon. Thank you, Mr. President. In addition to my esteemed colleague for Mr. Nguyen Chie, I would like to touch on question number 3, that the civil party is asking questions that elicit assumptions or speculations, so I believe that this question is not appropriate. Therefore, I submit that the chamber reject the last question posed by the civil party. The President. Thank you. And the counsel for Mr. Nguyen Chie, do you have similar observation, or do you share the observation of the defense team for Mr. Khieu Sampon concerning the third question posed by the civil party?
Mr. President, I see the hypothetical nature and the speculation character of that question. I think my client will also be able to see that. We limit our objections to the first question. The President.
Counsel for the civil party, you may proceed.
ទី1ដែលដើម
Counsel, Mr. President, concerning the first question posed by the civil party concerning the rounding up or the purges for execution or the accusation of the Cambodian body with the Vietnamese hat, I believe that this is utterly within the scope of the hearing, and I believe that he is the civil party, and it is an opportunity for him to state his suffering, and it is also the times that he should put the question to the accused. This is what he has always wanted to do. And as for the third question, I don't think that the third question elicits any speculation. I think that this question is appropriate in the sense that if he would lead this regime again, whether or not he would choose to do it differently. Thank you. The President. The Chamber rules on the objection by the defense team. On the first question, the Chamber wishes to advise that according to the direction in relation to the hearing of the suffering and harms sustained by the civil party, the Chamber grants the opportunity for the civil party to state the suffering and harms he or she sustained during the Democratic Cambodia period from the 17th of April 1975 to the 6th of January 1979. For this reason, the question is considered appropriate. The Chamber, the civil party has put the question to the co-accused, and the co-accused are directed to respond to the question. As for the third question, this question concerns directly and indirectly to the suffering of the civil party, and this opportunity is considered to be the opportunity that the civil party can put the question to the accused. Therefore, it depends on the accused themselves whether they would choose to respond to the question. Therefore, I refer the question to Mr. Kyew Sampon first to respond to the question put by the civil parties, followed by Mr. Nguyen Chie. You may proceed. Mr. Sun Sawandi, I am pleased to respond to your three questions. Your first question: why did the Khmer Rouge segregate the Kampuchea Crown people and then eventually take them for execution? To the best of my knowledge, that was not the case. To the best of my knowledge, at that time, the leaders of the Khmer Rouge had the plan to mobilize the forces, national forces, including Kampuchea Crown people too, in order to defend our country from being aggressed by Vietnam. There was no policy, there was no suggestion whatsoever to segregate the people. As for your second question, whether or not I was remorseful that I created a policy that led to the indescribable suffering of the Cambodian people. I would like to respond to you as follows. I have never taken part in forming such a policy. Because in my life, never have I imagined that I would form any policy to kill anyone, especially Cambodian people. As for your third question, if I can return to that period, what would I behave? Your last question is rather difficult to answer. For one fact is that we cannot return to the past. When we get old, we are old, we cannot return. But let's say if we can rewind the clock and return to the past, what would I choose to do? If I could rewind the clock and go back to the past, I would demand that the sufferings that Cambodian people had endured be known to the leaders and to others. And I would demand categorically that the Communist Party of Cambodia redirect its direction to its original plan when it was incepted. During its inception, the Communist Party Cambodia set a direction that Cambodia had to be independent, peace, and prosperity. People enjoyed their life and people had happiness. And our plan was to ensure the surplus of agricultural production so that we could export in exchange for some necessary commodities such as medicines and other stuff. At that time, Cambodian people were lack of medicines. So the life necessity commodities were very important, medicines and other important stuff for everyday life. That was the first priority, and then after that we would bring in factories and manufacturing and production so that Cambodia would gradually become industrialized. That was the original plan and direction of the party. That's what I had known, but what you had described that I did not know, I can tell you frankly that I did not know the atrocity committed and the pain people sustained. I would like to ask you for your understanding on my situation. I have told you the truth. I have told you to the best of my knowledge. I know that even though I tell you to the best of my knowledge, you are not still satisfied, but I cannot tell you any further because that is what I know, and I only tell you what I know. Thank you, the President. Court officer is now instructed to change the disc. The President. Next, I refer the questions put by the civil party to the accused Nguyen Chia to respond. Mr. Nguyen Chia, you may proceed. May it please the court, my respect to Mr. President and your honors. I am Nguyen Chia. I would like to respond to Mr. Savandi as follows. First and foremost, the Democratic Cambodia did not have any policy whatsoever to segregate people. There was no policy to divide people or categorize people as Khmer Kampuchea Kraum or Khmer people. We consider Cambodian people as Cambodian people in order to defend our country. Therefore, at that time, Democratic Cambodia considered Khmer Kampuchea Kraum as Cambodian people. This is my honest answer to your question. There was no reason to segregate Cambodian people from the Khmer Kampuchea Kraum. We never accused them of being Cambodian body with Vietnamese head. This is the first response to your question. Number two, as I said in my first point, to my knowledge, the second question relates to the first question. And as for the third question, it has been around 38 years already since then. Now, if we could go back to the past, what would be the policy of the Democratic Cambodia? I would say that it varied depending on the situation of the country. As the leaders, we had to find policy to prosper the country. So there is no possibility of returning to the past, but it varied depending on the situation. Thank you. The President. Thank you, Mr. Sawandi. The time is now appropriate for lunch adjournment. The Chamber will adjourn now and resume at 1:30 this afternoon. And this afternoon, the Chamber will hear your statement of sufferings and harm and another civil party this afternoon. And court officer, please assist the civil party during the break and have him return to this courtroom before 1:30. Security guards are instructed to bring Mr. Keo Sampon to the holding cell downstairs and have him return in this courtroom before 1:30 this afternoon. The court is now adjourned.